First contact. The night sky over Zardan Prime burned with the light of 1,000 funeral pyres. From his observatory tower, Ambassador Krell watched as another defense platform erupted into flames, its debris cascading toward the planet like a meteor shower. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of mourning among his people. "How long?" he asked, not turning away from the window. General Varix checked her tactical display. The iridescent scales along her neck had dulled to a matte gray, a physiological sign of extreme stress among Zardeni military officials. "The orbital defense grid is at 17% capacity," she said. "Perhaps 2 hours before complete atmospheric penetration. The evacuation is at 40% completion." Krell's upper appendages trembled slightly as he placed them against the crystalline window. The Nexus Collective had arrived just as they had to 12 other systems in the Zardani Federation. Their ships, vast obsidian structures that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light, moved with uncanny precision, as though controlled by a singular consciousness. "Chancellor Merix is requesting your presence in the Emergency Council," Varix said, her voice low and controlled despite the circumstances. "Tell her I'll join shortly," Krell replied. "I want to send one final transmission to our outer colonies." As Varix left the room, Krell moved to his communication station. The quantum entanglement transmitter was still operational, one of the few advantages the Zardani held over the Nexus Collective. He prepared to record what might be his final message as Ambassador of Zardan Prime when an alert flashed across his screen. "Unidentified vessel detected at system periphery," the automated system announced. "Configuration unknown. Not matching any Federation or Nexus signatures." Krell's 4 eyes widened as he studied the readings. The ship was relatively small, perhaps 1/5 the size of a standard Nexus destroyer, but it was moving at speeds that defied conventional propulsion physics. "General," he called out. "Are you seeing this?" Varix rushed back into the observatory, her scales momentarily flashing blue with surprise as she viewed the readings. "What is that? Who would be foolish enough to enter a system under Nexus attack?" They watched in silence as the mysterious vessel accelerated toward the main battle. Its trajectory was not the careful, calculated approach of Zardani ships, nor the relentless straight-line advance favored by the Nexus. Instead, it moved erratically, unpredictably, yet with what appeared to be deliberate precision. "Magnify," ordered Krell. The observatory's main display zoomed in on the approaching ship. Its design was unlike anything in the Federation database, sleek and angular, with what appeared to be rotating sections along its central axis. Its hull gleamed with a silver-blue luster that seemed to shimmer against the void of space. "No external weapons arrays," noted Varix. "No visible shield emitters. What are they thinking?" The unidentified ship suddenly accelerated, surging past the outer defensive line of Nexus vessels without slowing. 3 Nexus interceptors immediately broke formation to pursue, firing pulses of crimson energy that the smaller ship somehow avoided with movements that seemed to defy inertia itself. "That's impossible," whispered Varix. "No pilot could react that quickly." As they watched, breathless, the mysterious vessel performed a maneuver that Krell would later describe in his memoirs as like watching water flow uphill. It looped back on its own trajectory, somehow maintaining its velocity while completely reversing direction, and passed directly between 2 Nexus interceptors. The Nexus ships, attempting to track the smaller vessel, fired upon each other instead. Both interceptors exploded in silent bursts of light. "Contact that ship," Krell demanded, his voice suddenly urgent. "Now." Captain Maya Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Athena, her expression calm despite the chaos unfolding on the tactical displays surrounding her. Earth Space Command had been explicit in their orders. Observe, gather intelligence on the so-called Nexus Collective, and remain undetected at all costs. First contact protocols were clear. Humanity was not yet ready to announce its presence to the wider galactic community. But Captain Chen had watched recordings from 12 other systems. 12 other worlds where the Nexus arrived, methodically dismantled all resistance, and began their systematic strip mining operations, leaving once vibrant planets as hollowed-out husks. "Tactical assessment," she ordered. Lieutenant Commander Jackson pulled up a holographic display at the center of the bridge. Nexus fleet consists of 1 command carrier, 17 destroyers, and approximately 200 interceptors and support craft. Planetary defenses at critical levels. Population centers already experiencing bombardment. "And the natives?" Chen asked. "Zardani Federation, according to our long-range observations," replied Science Officer Dr. Amara Osei. "Reptilian humanoid species, Level 7 technology base, Democratic Confederation of 14 star systems. This appears to be their homeworld." Chen studied the tactical display. The Athena was humanity's most advanced vessel, the culmination of 50 years of reverse engineering the crashed alien ship that had landed in the Arizona desert in 2097. It incorporated technologies that even the ship's designers didn't fully understand. It was supposed to be a research vessel, primarily. Its weapons were an afterthought, defensive measures only. But those defensive measures included systems that no other species in this sector appeared to possess. "Captain," Communications Officer Lai interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet. They've spotted us." Chen straightened her uniform jacket. This wasn't how humanity's first official contact with an alien civilization was supposed to happen. There were protocols, preparations, cultural integration specialists who had trained for decades for this moment. But there was also the Athena's primary directive, encoded into every officer's oath: protect sentient life wherever it may exist. "Put them through," she said. The main view screen flickered, and Chen found herself looking at a being with 4 large, expressive eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on a face covered in fine, iridescent scales. It wore what appeared to be formal attire, flowing robes of a material that seemed to shift colors with each movement. "Unknown vessel," the alien said in a voice that sounded like harmonized strings. "I am Ambassador Krell of the Zardani Federation. Identify yourself and your purpose in this conflict." Chen took a deep breath. History pivoted on this moment. "Ambassador Krell, I am Captain Maya Chen of the United Earth ship Athena. We are observers who could no longer stand by and watch the destruction of your world." The ambassador's 4 eyes blinked in rapid sequence. "United Earth. We have no record of your species or government. That's because we've kept ourselves hidden," Chen replied honestly. "Until now." Krell seemed to process this information, then asked, "What is your intention, Captain Chen of Earth?" Chen looked around at her crew, the 37 men and women who represented humanity's first venture into interstellar diplomacy. They had trained for observation, for gathering intelligence. They had not trained for war. But they were still human, and humans had a long history of standing against overwhelming odds. "Our intention," she said firmly, "is to help you survive this attack." From the Nexus command carrier, Overseer Prime K937 observed the unexpected development with what might be described as confusion. Had the concept of individual emotion still existed within the collective? Its physical form, a gray-skinned humanoid figure with cybernetic implants replacing much of its original biological components, remained motionless as it processed the sensor data directly through its neural interface. The unidentified vessel's technology did not match any known species cataloged during the collective's expansion through this sector. Its movements defied the standardized combat algorithms that had proven successful in 17 consecutive system conquests. Anomaly detected. K937. Transmitted to the Nexus network. Unknown vessel employing non-standard propulsion and evasion techniques. Tactical reassessment required. The collective consciousness that governed all Nexus operations responded instantly, updating combat protocols across the fleet. 6 destroyers broke from their assault on the planetary defense grid and moved to intercept the intruder. K937 opened a direct communication channel to the unknown ship. Such actions were rarely necessary. Most species capitulated quickly or fought in predictable patterns until their inevitable defeat. But standard protocols required identification of all anomalous elements before proceeding with resource extraction. Unidentified vessel K937 transmitted, its synthesized voice devoid of inflection. You have interfered with Nexus collective operations. Identify your species designation and technological origin immediately. The response came quickly. This is Captain Maya Chen of the United Earth ship Athena. You are attacking a peaceful civilization. Withdraw your forces immediately or face the consequences. K937 processed this demand through all available historical databases. No record of Earth existed. No technology matching the intruder's capabilities had been encountered in the collective's 3-century expansion. Your demand is irrelevant, K937 replied. The Zardeni resources have been allocated for collective use. Your interference is inefficient and will be terminated. The transmission ended, and K937 directed all available interceptors to surround and eliminate the human vessel. What happened next would be recorded in Zardeni historical archives as the miracle of Zardan Prime. The 6 Nexus destroyers formed a perfect hexagonal formation around the human ship, a standard encirclement tactic that had proven effective against countless defensive formations. Their weapons, concentrated plasma streams capable of cutting through planetary crusts, charged simultaneously. Ambassador Krell, watching from his observatory, held his breath. The tiny ship was doomed. Then, just as the Nexus vessels fired, the human ship disappeared. Not through any visible cloaking technology or dimensional shift, both of which the Zardeni had experimented with. It simply ceased to be in one location and reappeared instantly behind the formation. Quantum translocation, whispered General Varix in disbelief. They've mastered it. Before the Nexus ships could reorient, the human vessel released what appeared to be 6 small autonomous drones. Each drone attached itself to a Nexus destroyer, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then, in perfect synchronization, all 6 Nexus destroyers went dark. Their engines died, their weapons powered down, and they began to drift aimlessly through space. They didn't destroy them, Krell noted with astonishment. They disabled them. The observatory's communication system activated. Ambassador, came Captain Chen's voice. We've bought you some time, but the Nexus will adapt quickly. We need to coordinate with your military leadership immediately. The emergency council chamber of Zardan Prime was filled to capacity. Representatives from all Zardani worlds still in communication had joined via holographic projection. Military leaders, scientists, and government officials all stood in stunned silence as Captain Chen and her small delegation, Science Officer Osei, and Security Chief Rodriguez, entered the chamber. The humans were shorter than most Zardani, with no scales and only 2 eyes. Their skin tones varied from light beige to deep brown, and their body language was unfamiliar. But at this moment, to the desperate Zardani, they might as well have been divine saviors. Chancellor Merix, the eldest member of the Zardani leadership, stepped forward. Her scales had faded to white with age, and the ceremonial robes of her office seemed to weigh heavily on her slight frame. Captain Chen, she said, her voice carrying the formal resonance of Zardani diplomatic speech, the Federation owes you and your people a debt that cannot be measured. But I must ask, why has your species remained hidden until now? And why choose this moment to reveal yourselves? Chen looked around the chamber, acutely aware that this conversation would define humanity's relationship with the Zardeni, and potentially all other alien civilizations, for generations to come. Chancellor, she replied, choosing her words carefully, humanity is young among the stars. We discovered faster-than-light travel only 30 Earth years ago, after a chance encounter with alien technology. We've been observing, learning, preparing ourselves for the day when we would join the wider galactic community. She paused, then continued with greater conviction. But when we discovered what the Nexus Collective was doing to inhabited worlds, we couldn't remain hidden any longer. Where I come from, there's an old saying: the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. The translation system struggled briefly with the concept, but the sentiment seemed to resonate with the assembled Zardani. "Your ship," said General Varix, stepping forward. "How did it perform that translocation maneuver? How did your drones disable our Nexus destroyers?" Dr. Osai answered this question. "What you call translocation, we call the Einstein-Rosen bridge drive. It creates a temporary wormhole that allows instantaneous movement between 2 points in space. As for the drones, they emitted a targeted electromagnetic pulse specifically calibrated to the Nexus Collective's neural network frequency." "You know their weakness," stated Krell, his 4 eyes fixed intently on the humans. "We've been studying them for months," Chen confirmed. "The Nexus operates as a hive mind, all ships connected to a central intelligence housed in the command carrier. Disrupt that connection, and the individual units become temporarily inert." A murmur ran through the council chamber. The Zardani had fought the Nexus for years without discovering this vulnerability. However, Chen continued, her expression growing grave, "the effect is temporary. The Nexus adapts quickly, developing countermeasures against whatever disabled them. We won't be able to use the same approach twice." Chancellor Merrick stepped forward again. "What do you propose, Captain?" Chen nodded to Security Chief Rodriguez, who activated a holographic display showing the Nexus fleet formations. "The Nexus fights as a collective," Chen explained. "Perfect coordination, no individual initiative. Tactically impressive, but strategically predictable. Humans fight differently. We propose a coordinated defense incorporating what we call asymmetric warfare, multiple small strikes from unexpected vectors, constantly changing tactics, never establishing patterns that they can analyze and counter." General Varix studied the tactical display with newfound hope. "You believe this approach can succeed where our conventional defenses have failed?" "I believe," Chen replied, "that together we have a chance. The Athena can't defeat the Nexus alone, but we can teach you how to fight them in ways they've never encountered." As the council erupted into discussion, Ambassador Krull moved closer to Captain Chen. "There's something you're not telling us," he said quietly, "about why your people have remained hidden." Chen met his 4-eyed gaze steadily. "Ambassador, humanity has a complicated history. We've achieved remarkable technological advancement, but our social and political evolution hasn't always kept pace. We wanted to be certain we were ready, that we wouldn't bring our conflicts to the stars." "And now?" Krell asked. Chen looked at the tactical display, where the massive Nexus fleet still surrounded Zardan Prime. "Now we don't have that luxury anymore," she said. "The galaxy has found us, ready or not." Alarms suddenly blared throughout the council chamber. General Varix rushed to a communications terminal, her scales flashing urgent patterns of red and orange. "The disabled destroyers are back online," she announced, "and the Nexus command carrier is deploying ground forces. They've adapted already." Chen exchanged glances with her officers, then turned to face the Zardani leadership. "Chancellor, this is where humanity shows you what we do best," she said. "When faced with overwhelming odds, we improvise, we adapt, and we overcome." She activated her communication device. "Athena, this is Chen. Initiate Operation Prometheus. It's time to show the Nexus what humans are really capable of." The turning point. The Nexus Collective's counterstrike came with overwhelming force. Hundreds of interceptors darkened the skies of Zardan Prime as massive harvester ships descended through the atmosphere. The disabled destroyers had reactivated with new shielding frequencies that rendered the humans' EMP drones ineffective. Aboard the Athena, Chief Engineer Ravi Patil monitored the ship's systems as Lieutenant Commander Jackson executed a series of maneuvers that would have killed any crew without the vessel's advanced inertial dampeners. "Shields at 78% and holding," Ravi reported, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "The quantum core is stable, but we can't perform another translocation jump for at least 17 minutes. Captain Chen studied the tactical display, where the Nexus command carrier remained at the center of the attack formation, surrounded by layers of defensive ships. It was the obvious target. Eliminate the central intelligence, and the entire collective would fall into disarray. But it was also impossibly well protected. "We need to think differently," Chen said, more to herself than to her crew. Then, turning to Dr. Osei, "What have you learned about the Nexus ground troops?" "They operate on the same network as the ships," Osei replied, "but with a more limited connection range. If they move more than a few kilometers from their command nodes, they become autonomous units following their last received instructions." Chen's eyes lit up. "And those command nodes are?" "The harvester ships," confirmed OC. "Lieutenant Louis." Chen called to her communications officer, "Get me General Verix. I think I know how we can turn this around." General Verix led her remaining fighters through the underground tunnels of Zardan Prime's capital city. The network had been built centuries ago as a public transportation system, but now served as the Resistance's primary means of movement. Beside her moved the human called Rodriguez, security chief of the Athena, and as Verix was quickly learning, a tactical genius by any species standards. "Your people adapt quickly," Rodriguez commented as they reached a junction where Zardani soldiers were already implementing human combat techniques, setting up asymmetric defensive positions rather than the uniform formations that had proven so ineffective against the Nexus. "Necessity is a powerful teacher," Verix replied, "though your species seems particularly adept at warfare." Rodriguez checked the unusual weapon she carried, a compact rifle that the humans called a Gauss gun, which used electromagnetic acceleration rather than chemical propellants to launch projectiles at hypersonic speeds. "We had plenty of practice fighting each other before we turned our attention to the stars," she said grimly. "Not our proudest history, but it gave us perspectives that the Nexus seems to lack." Their conversation was interrupted by Verix's communication device. "General," came Captain Chen's voice, "we have a plan, but it's going to require precise coordination between our ship, your ground forces, and the remaining orbital platforms." Verix listened as Chen outlined her strategy. It was audacious, possibly suicidal, and unlike anything in Zardani military doctrine. It was, in short, perfectly human. "It could work," Verix said when Chen finished explaining. "But the timing would need to be precise." "Precision is something humans excel at," Rodriguez interjected with a confident smile, "especially when our backs are against the wall." Ambassador Krell moved through the underground scientific complex, where Zardani researchers worked frantically alongside Dr. OC to adapt the human electromagnetic pulse technology to target the specific neural frequency used by the Nexus ground forces. "The problem," OC explained as they worked, "is that the Nexus adapts to each specific disruption we use. We need to create multiple versions of the EMP, each operating on slightly different frequencies." A Zardani scientist, Director Laxon of the Planetary Defense Institute, looked up from his work. "Perhaps if we modulated the pulse in a nonlinear pattern, something chaotic that they couldn't predict." "Exactly." OC's eyes widened with excitement. "A randomized frequency shift based on mathematical chaos theory." "The Nexus thinks linearly. It's their fundamental weakness." Krell watched in amazement as the human and Zardani scientists began collaborating with an efficiency that belied their entirely different evolutionary histories. It was as if the mere presence of these humans had catalyzed something in his people, a spark of innovative thinking that had been suppressed by years of conventional warfare against the Nexus. "How did your species develop such unconventional thinking?" Krell asked OC during a brief pause in their work. The human scientist considered the question. "Earth has incredible biodiversity. Millions of species all evolving different survival strategies. I think humans learned early that there's rarely just one solution to a problem. When conventional approaches fail, we improvise." "The Nexus never improvises," noted Director Laxon. "They analyze, adapt, and implement. but always following the same fundamental logic. And that, said Osai with a determined smile, is how we're going to beat them. Chief Engineer Ravi Patel floated in the Athena's quantum core chamber, making adjustments to the ship's revolutionary propulsion system that the vessel's designers back on Earth would have considered impossible, if not heretical. The translocation drive was humanity's greatest technological achievement, reverse-engineered from the crashed alien vessel that had become known as the Arizona Visitor. But Ravi had always seen the technology not as something to be revered, but as something to be improved upon. Quantum entanglement established, reported his assistant, Lieutenant Park, who monitored the systems from outside the radiation-shielded chamber. But I'm still showing a 15-minute cooldown period before we can initiate another jump. Not good enough, Ravi muttered. Captain needs 7 minutes maximum. He made another adjustment to the field stabilizers, a modification that violated at least 3 fundamental principles taught at the Earth Space Academy. But conventional thinking wouldn't save Zardan Prime. Divert auxiliary power from life support to the entanglement matrix, he ordered. We can breathe shallow for a few hours. Sir, Park objected. That's well outside safety parameters. Ravi's response was cut short by Captain Chen's voice over the communication system. Engineer Patel, status report. Working on it, Captain, he replied. I can get you translocation capability in 7 minutes, but we'll be running on minimal life support, and I can't guarantee how many jumps the system can handle before a complete overhaul is required. Do it, Chen ordered without hesitation. 1 jump is all we need, if this works. From the central command bunker, Captain Chen coordinated the most complex military operation of her career. The holographic display showed the positions of all forces, the Nexus troops methodically advancing through the capital city, the Zardani resistance fighters moving through the underground tunnels, and the Athena currently engaged in evasive maneuvers in the upper atmosphere. The harvester ships are the key, she explained to Chancellor Merrickx and Ambassador Krell, who stood beside her. They contain the local command nodes for the ground forces. If we can isolate them from the main collective consciousness in the command carrier, even temporarily, the ground forces will freeze. And that's when our fighters strike, continued General Merrickx through the communication link. Exactly, confirmed Chen. But first, we need to draw the Nexus fleet into position. The plan relied on what humans called a Kansas City shuffle, making the enemy look left while you moved right. The Athena would appear to make a desperate attack on the Nexus command carrier, drawing the bulk of the defensive fleet to protect it. Meanwhile, the few remaining Zardani orbital platforms would launch their entire arsenal not at the Nexus ships, but at carefully calculated points in empty space. The debris field will create a momentary sensor blind spot, Chen explained. During that window, the Athena will execute a precision translocation jump directly above the 3 primary harvester ships and deploy the modified EMP devices. And if the Nexus adapts to this strategy? Asked Chancellor Merrickx. Chen's expression remained determined. They will, eventually. But they've never encountered human unpredictability before. We only need a few minutes of confusion to turn this battle. The Nexus Overseer Prime K937 monitored the battle with growing computational complexity that the collective consciousness might have recognized as frustration, had such emotions not been purged from its operating parameters. The human vessel defied standard combat algorithms, executing maneuvers that appeared to have no tactical logic yet consistently avoided destruction. Anomaly continues. K937 transmitted to the collective. Human combat doctrine does not conform to established patterns. Recommend allocation of additional processing capacity to analysis. The response came instantly. Cold, logical, efficient. Analysis resources allocated. Proceed with standard harvesting operations. Human vessel is single anomaly. Statistically insignificant. K937 directed the fleet to maintain standard formation as the human ship approached the command carrier in what appeared to be a direct attack run. Interceptors moved to intercept, Destroyers adjusted position to create overlapping fields of fire. The human vessel would be eliminated, the anomaly resolved, and the resource extraction would continue as planned. What the Nexus Collective failed to recognize, what its billions of interconnected minds had never evolved to understand, was that humans excelled at being unpredictable, at creating chaos where order should prevail, at turning apparent weakness into sudden, devastating strength. As the Athena accelerated toward the command carrier, the remaining Zardani orbital platforms suddenly fired every weapon they possessed, not at the Nexus ships, but into empty space between the fleet formations. Thousands of high-yield projectiles detonated simultaneously, creating an expanding sphere of superheated gas, radiation, and debris. Nexus sensors, calibrated for precision rather than adaptability, temporarily overloaded. In that moment of blindness, the Athena vanished. On the bridge of the Athena, warning lights flashed as the translocation drive engaged with minimal cooldown time. The ship shuddered violently, and several non-essential systems immediately went offline as power was diverted to maintain the quantum field integrity. "Translocation successful," reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson, her voice strained as the ship rematerialized directly above the three massive Nexus harvester ships that had descended into Zardan Prime's atmosphere. "But we're running on fumes, Captain." "Deploy the EMP devices," Chen ordered. "All of them." From the Athena's launch bays, 12 specially modified drones shot toward the harvesters. Each carried an electromagnetic pulse generator programmed with the chaotic frequency modulation pattern developed by the human and Zardani scientists. The drones attached themselves to the hulls of the harvester ships and immediately activated. There was no visible effect, no explosion, no dramatic light show. But throughout the capital city, something extraordinary happened. The Nexus ground troops, thousands of cybernetically enhanced soldiers moving in perfect synchronization, suddenly stopped. They didn't fall or deactivate. They simply froze in place, as if waiting for instructions that would never come. It worked, Chen breathed, watching the tactical display as the harvester ships lost connection to both their ground forces and the main collective consciousness. "General Varix," she called through the communication system. "You have approximately 7 minutes before the Nexus adapts. Make them count." The counterattack came from everywhere at once. Zardani resistance fighters emerged from hidden positions throughout the city, targeting the immobilized Nexus troops with weapons modified according to human specifications. From underground tunnels, maintenance shafts, and concealed bunkers, the defenders of Zardan Prime struck with coordinated fury against an enemy that had never known defeat. General Varix led the main assault team, with Security Chief Rodriguez at her side. They moved through the city center toward the largest harvester ship, which had landed in what was once the Grand Plaza. Remember, Rodriguez called to the mixed team of human security personnel and Zardani soldiers, once they adapt to the EMP, focus on disrupting their formations. They think as a collective. Force them to think as individuals. The Nexus troops began to twitch and move erratically as their systems started to overcome the electromagnetic disruption. But instead of resuming their perfect coordination, they found themselves surrounded by attackers who refused to follow predictable patterns. Where the Nexus expected direct assaults, the defenders used hit-and-run tactics. Where they anticipated defensive formations, they encountered scattered, mobile targets that refused to stand and fight. The perfectly ordered Nexus battle plan dissolved into thousands of individual skirmishes, and individual thinking was not the collective's strength. High above the planet, the Athena faced the full fury of the Nexus fleet. The massive command carrier had finally targeted the human vessel, recognizing it as the source of the disruption. "Shields at 34%, reported Lieutenant Park as another volley of energy weapons impacted the Athena. "We can't take much more of this, Captain." "We don't need to," Chen replied, her eyes fixed on the tactical display where the Zardani counterattack was rapidly gaining momentum. "We just need to keep their attention focused on us for a few more minutes." Ravi's voice came through the communication system, strained but determined. "Captain, I've managed to reroute power from the non-essential decks. We might be able to manage one more short-range translocation jump, but I can't guarantee where we'll end up." Chen considered the options. The Athena was humanity's most advanced ship, carrying technology that could not fall into Nexus hands. But abandoning the Zardani now, when victory was within reach, was unthinkable. "Stand by for my command, Mr. Patel," she said. "We're not done yet." She opened a channel to Ambassador Krill in the underground command center. "Ambassador, we need your remaining orbital platforms to target these coordinates." She transmitted a set of precise positions surrounding the Nexus command carrier. "Fire everything you have left on my mark." In the command center, Ambassador Krill stared at the coordinates in confusion. "Captain, these points are not direct hits on the command carrier. They're surrounding it in an irregular pattern." "Trust me, Ambassador," came Chen's voice. "Humans understand chaos better than anyone." Krill looked to Chancellor Merrix, who gave a solemn nod. "Do as she says." The ambassador input the coordinates into the defense system. The few remaining Zardani orbital platforms, little more than weapons attached to power sources at this point, adjusted their aim. "Ready on your command, Captain Chen," he reported. Aboard the Nexus command carrier, Overseer Prime K937 experienced an unprecedented computational conflict. The battle was not proceeding according to established parameters. The ground forces were reporting massive losses against an enemy that had been calculated as 97% conquered just hours earlier. More disturbing was the behavior of the human vessel. Despite severe damage and power fluctuations, it maintained its position directly in front of the command carrier, making no attempt to escape or attack. This defied all strategic logic. "Anomaly assessment required," K937 transmitted to the collective. "Human vessel behavior indicates possible deception strategy." The response came back with unusual delay. "Analysis incomplete. Human patterns contain randomized elements resistant to prediction algorithms." For the first time in its existence, K937 made an individual decision without consensus from the collective. It ordered the entire fleet to converge on the human vessel and eliminate it immediately. "They're taking the bait," Chen announced as the tactical display showed the Nexus fleet converging on the Athena's position. "Ambassador Krell, fire now." The Zardani orbital platforms released their remaining energy in a coordinated barrage. But instead of striking the command carrier directly, the weapons hit precise points in space around it, creating a pattern that seemed random to conventional military thinking. What the Nexus collective couldn't understand, was that humans had learned to weaponize chaos itself. The energy discharges, striking at mathematically calculated points based on chaos theory principles, developed by Dr. Ose and the Zardani scientists, created a cascading resonance pattern that interfered with the Nexus neural network in ways their adaptive algorithms couldn't predict or counter. Throughout the Nexus fleet, ships began to lose coordination. Some fired at empty space, others at their own allies. The perfect synchronization that made the collective so formidable dissolved into confused individual units trying to process contradictory information. "Mr. Patel," Chen called to her chief engineer, "now would be a good time for that jump." The Athena's damaged translocation drive engaged one.